Okay, so the time has come where I am going to rank them, and I feel like a part of me is gonna die. What's up, everybody? My name is Zach, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be reviewing all of Rachel Lynn Solomon's adult romance novels. Rachel Lynn Solomon just put out a new book, like maybe a month ago, if it's even been that long, and that is Business or Pleasure. We're going to talk about these covers in just a second because these are not the covers that you're going to see on the shelf. They're going to be very similar though. So welcome back. If you're new here, subscribing to the channel helps me out a ton. A like on the video goes a long way, and welcome. There's tons of information in the Discord. There's tons of information in the description, like a link to the Discord where there's like 250 people in it who read, and it's a great community. So if you would love to join us over there on Discord, you're welcome. The link is in the description box below. So the point of today's video is like an author spotlight. And like I said, I'm going to be spotlighting Rachel Lynn Solomon and talking through her books. These are the covers that I have. These are the Illumicrate exclusive editions, which these days I don't buy many of because they're pretty expensive and I only do it if it's really, really worth it. Rachel Lynn Solomon is one of those authors that is an auto buy for me, and I really, really love her books, so I'm excited to tell you guys about them today. I am going to first review them in the order that I read them, and then I'm going to sort of rank them for you guys in order of my favorite to least favorite. Rachel Lynn Solomon also writes YA contemporary or YA romance. She has a few of those books out as well, and I would love to get to them. I just wanted to separate her adult romance books from the YA ones because they're gonna be different, and I think they reach a different audience, obviously, by the genre ratings. So the first book I ever read by Rachel Lynn Solomon is Weather Girl. This book began my love for Rachel Lynn Solomon, and still I absolutely adore this book. This is the story of Ari and Russell. They work for a radio news outlet, I guess. I don't know the correct news phrases here, but basically they are both reporters for the same news outlet. Ari, our main female character, is a weather girl, hence the title. So she's a meteorologist and she reports on the weather. And Russell is a sports news, I keep wanting to say podcaster, but journalist, I guess, reporter. That's the word. Reporter. Got it. Okay. Russell is a sports newscaster reporter. The struggle is real. Anyways, so they work at the same station. They have for a while, and they haven't really interacted very much in the past, but their bosses used to be married and are going through a divorce. Because they're going through a divorce and the divorce is very messy, Russell and Ari team up together to attempt to get their bosses back together, which seems like an odd plot that would be hard to work with. But one thing that stays true for Rachel Lynn Solomon through all of her books is that she is able to take typical romance tropes and make them believable. And that's something I really appreciate about her, and I think is unique to her and just a few other romance authors like Emily Henry. I feel like does a good job of taking romance tropes and making them more believable, which is the kind of romance that I enjoy the most. And that definitely was true in this book. Going in, because this was my first one of hers, I was like, how is anyone going to pull this off and make it make sense? But she definitely does. So throughout the book, this is known in the synopsis, as they are trying to get their bosses back together, they end up spending more time together, I will say. One thing I really liked in this book is that Russell is a single dad and he is divorced. And I think that, or separated, I don't remember if they were actually married, but I think that's not represented a lot. I know that the single dad trope is like its own trope, but I feel like Rachel Lynn Solomon did a really good job of showing what it's like to be a single dad or a single parent and working full time and all the intricacies that come with that. And then someone new coming into that child's life. It's handled very, very carefully. Another aspect about this book, it being my first by Rachel Lynn Solomon that I really appreciated, is that there's Jewish representation. What I did not know at the time is that that is a characteristic throughout all of the books. Rachel Lynn Solomon herself is Jewish, and so she adds that into all of her books, at least the adult romance ones. And having now read all three of them, I can say that that representation is in all three. It's very refreshing. We definitely don't see enough of that either. In this book in particular, the male lead is he calls himself fat, and that representation is in there, and it's very cool to watch him love his body, and then Ari, the female in the book, also love him for that. It's just such a beautiful relationship. I think that you will really, really enjoy this. I loved the setting, like the news and the journalism and the going on the air. I just, everything about this book there were very funny moments, and it was like just a wholehearted, humble story that made me laugh and feel a lot of things. I really, really recommend Weather Girl. I loved it a lot. Okay, so the next book that I read by Rachel Lynn Solomon was The X-Talk. This is actually her first ever published adult romance novel, and it got a lot of hype when it first came out. I just didn't get around to it for some reason until Weather Girl came out, which was, you know, the first one I read by her. I didn't get around to The X-Talk until now. I don't know what kept me waiting because it got a lot of hype. I mean, just like any other romance book, there were some people who didn't enjoy it, but that's pretty typical. I saw mostly really, really good reviews. So the X-Talk I actually listened to on audio. So thank you to Penguin Random House Audio for presenting me with a audio copy of this book for review. The audio was very, very good. And I, spoiler alert, also listened to the audio for Business or Pleasure, which was also very good. Reflecting back, I don't know if it was the same narrator or not. You could easily find that out. But either way, if they were two separate ones or the same one, they're very, very good. And I really, really love the audio. I knew all along that the X-Talk I wanted to listen to because this is the story of two people who work at the same radio. Here we go with radio and journalism topics and terminology, but they work at like a radio station. There we go. And that radio station is failing. So it has a few hit shows, but the owner of the radio station is like, we're not getting enough views. There aren't enough people listening to us every week. We're losing money and we're gonna go under. And so these two people team up with an idea of a podcast radio. It is like a podcast show where and it's also kind of mirroring what NPR does, this radio station is. And so they come up with this idea where they are going to make a show talking about exes and like lost love, mistakes that we make in romance, finding new love, overcoming adversity in love, and all of those things. And the people at the company come up with this good idea to take our two hosts and have them make up a story where they were together and then they broke up, and they're now hosting this podcast together and showing the world that you can overcome breakup and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the premise going in. And the main male lead is like tries to be a very ethical guy, and so he takes a lot of issue with the fact that they're lying to their audience and that they're fake dating. Going in, I knew that there was a fake dating element, and I really hate that in books, except when it's done well, which Rachel Lynn Solomon does. She took a fake dating trope and made it something that it was believable, and I could see two people doing this in order to save a company or a radio production company that they love, and they love their jobs, and they were going to do anything to make that happen. This story, just like Weather Girl and all of her other books, weaves in a lot of other topics such as grief. The main female character has lost her dad and is going through grief and learning to live with that. If you've read The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, which is another book that I absolutely love, and The 7-Year Slip, they talk about grief very similarly, is that even how you say that? I don't know, close enough. Where they really show it in small moments that are really subtle, but when it hits, you're like, wow, that hit deep. Rather than just kind of describing something, they actually show it and describe it, and it hits so well. Like, I really, really loved this book. There were a lot of funny moments to break it up where I was like laughing so hard. I listened to a lot of this book while walking on my lunch at work, and it just really brightened my day. And I loved this book a lot, and I really recommend it. One of the quotes that I wanted to pull up that kind of describes the premise really well says, "We create a relationship, then we create a breakup, and then we create a show." So that's like the whole idea behind this is they're going to create this fake relationship, then they're going to create a fake breakup so that they can create a show. Yeah, it's so unique. Another really cool aspect of this is you actually get the transcripts from the show, and so you get to see kind of what they talk about and how it goes. I just love that there was some mixed media in it. yeah, just really enjoyed it just as much as Weather Girl. But at the end, I'm gonna have to rank these, and I thought about doing it ahead of time so that I could know what my ranking was gonna be. But I knew talking about each book, because I loved them all so much, they were all 5 stars. I knew it was gonna be really hard to try to decipher which one was my favorite. And each time I talk about one, I'm like, oh, this one was my favorite. But it's so hard to decide. So the last book that I read by Rachel Lynn Solomon is her newest book, Business or Pleasure, and this had a really interesting premise to it. So the story behind this one is that our 2 main characters are at separate events. Our first main character is at an event where her job is a ghostwriter. She was the ghostwriter for this lady who, oh, it's so funny, does like self-help books, and the like tagline for these self-help books are live, laugh, girl boss. And our main character just thinks that that's absolutely ridiculous. And those moments had me cracking up. The girl that she is ghostwriting for they've never met in person. They've only like talked through email and stuff. And when she goes through the book signing, the girl doesn't even recognize her. And our main character is the one who wrote her book. And there were just so many funny moments. So after she goes to this signing and goes to this book launch or whatever, she hops across the street to this bar where there is also like a Comic-Con happening, and there are people, trickling into the bar from that. And that's where she meets the male lead character for this book. And they end up having a one-night stand that does not go well. And I'm going to get into the commentary behind that I loved. So they end up getting into the bedroom, and while they're there, he just does so many things that turn her off. And she's thinking in her head, in the internal monologue, oh, it was so funny. She's thinking like, what is he doing? It was nothing like invasive or that didn't have consent. It was just awkward and uncomfortable for her at times. And she's like, what is he actually doing? So much commentary behind that. So anyways, that ends up happening. They go their separate ways, and then she ends up getting a call, and she doesn't know it's him yet until she gets to the business meeting. She gets a call that she is going to ghostwrite for a famous actor who starred in a show that I will say is similar to like Teen Wolf, where he was like a werewolf in it. So I loved it. I loved it. And so she goes to this meeting, and they're talking about the actor in the show. And then she meets him, and she's like, oh my God, it's him. It's the guy from the One Night Stand. And she ends up ghostwriting the story about him. And he's a very popular, famous werewolf actor from this teen drama. And then they end up going on tour together for the book, and she has to like start writing about it and things like that. And they end up traveling, and that aspect was really cool. So what I liked about this book, I liked this book so much, is that Rachel Lynn Solomon takes the most intimate thing that we do as humans, one of the most intimate things, which is sex. And she shows how it can be awkward and uncomfortable, and we might do things that our partners don't like, but all those things can be made better through communication. But most people are really embarrassed to communicate about sex. And she really breaks that down. And it was so, so beautiful and refreshing. I've never seen a book done like this. So if you know someone who has written like this, I would love to know, because she talks about so many small moments that can be awkward or uncomfortable, like taking your shirt off and it getting caught on something and there being a laugh, to like more detailed, intimate things that you can get if you read this book. It was just so incredible. So she ends up being honest with him and saying like, that was really bad. And he's like, okay, I know I'm really bad at this. Like, I've only had one other partner. Can you like coach me and help me? And their journey together in intimacy was just so beautiful, so beautiful. I will also say that this book is kind of like a love letter to nerds and fandoms. I loved how that culture was mixed in. There's also mixed media in this, just a top-notch story. And she also has the Jewish representation. And I just loved how vulnerable Rachel Lynn Solomon showed up in this book to talk about sex and intimacy. Because ultimately, and I've talked about this a lot on my channel when I read romance and authors write sex, like they are showing a part of themselves too. And I always ask you guys to, even if something is cringy for you, the author visualize the scene that way and not to be too harsh on that. Like, I've read tons of sex scenes in books where I'm like, okay, this is cringy and I would never want to be a part of this or in this situation, I don't think. But the author is envisioning it for the characters. And so I'm so here for it, even if it is a little cringy. This, just breaking this down, and this just has a very special place in my heart because of that. I don't know that I will ever find another book that can break down romance the way that this author did, with humor and transparency and vulnerability. Okay, so the time has come where I am going to rank them, and I feel like a part of me is gonna die because all of these were 5 stars and I just loved them so much. So know that they're the ones that beat the ones below it, beat it by like, you can't even see it. It's so small of a win because I love them so much, and they are a bit different in what they're trying to do in each one. But I would recommend, if you've read a Rachel Lynn Solomon book and didn't like it, that you try at least one of her other ones. If you haven't read any of them, then please give them a try. But okay, so my least I can't even say that. I can't even say my least favorite. Okay, let's phrase it this way. Coming in at number 3 was The X Talk. I don't really know why, except for the other two just narrowly beat it out in the topics that they talked about. But this is still one of my all-time favorite romances. Like, if I'm not shouting that Rachel Lynn Solomon is one of my favorite romance authors, I don't know what this video is. Like, and then next would be Weather Girl. And then finally, Business or Pleasure was my favorite of hers so far. Going into this, I actually didn't think I was going to like it very much because I don't tend to like books that are super smutty. For example, there's a new book out, I think it's called like The Roommate or something, where a girl like takes care of a guy, and apparently it's like really, really smutty. And I like the premise of it, but I'm hesitant to read it because I don't love smutty books. But it wasn't trying to be smutty. It was trying to show intimacy and love and romance through sex, which is not something we get a lot of. So it was my favorite. Wow. This video was really fun to make because I obviously love her books a lot, and I hope that I've convinced you to at least try one of her books, or to try them again if you already have tried one. I hope that you'll take something away from this video. Even if you didn't like Rachel Lynn Solomon, I'm open to differing opinions if you want to tell me why you don't like her. But wow, just looking at the stack of books fills my heart up with so much love and joy. And that's why I do this. This is why I read books and why I love to talk to you guys about them. So thank you so much for giving me a place to do that. I do want to give a very special thank you to the Mostly Grossly crew, who help support my channel by joining my channel membership for $5 a month. We do things like hangouts together, read a book together every other month. We have a separate section in the Discord where we talk about life and connect, and it's just a really great place to be. So if you'd want to join us over at the Mostly Ghostly crew, you can click the join button, but subscribing to the channel is free and helps out a ton. So thank you to everyone who has done that and comes back to watch my videos. I love you guys so much, and I hope you take something away from this. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Sound hoodie season back around, no more summer bounce, little squeeze out, squeeze. See the indoors when we're throwing down, oversized jumping.